Buenos días, damas y caballeros, amigos y amigas, jóvenes, todos. That's as far as my Spanish goes. But just as this great science of yoga has no language, I think what I wish to say today also does not require any specific language. I shall use English porque mi español no es muy bueno. Voy a decir algunas palabras en inglés, por favor. I am delighted to be here this morning. It's a great privilege to have been invited to speak on the occasion of the 5th Yoga Cup, Mexico, organized by the International Yoga Sports Federation. And therefore, first of all, my heartiest congratulations to the International Yoga Sports Federation and all the other organizers and sponsors that have made this cup possible. I was a while ago talking to a good friend, Mr. Ulises of Bikram Yoga, and I did comment, as he did, that yoga is a sport of a very different order. It is not a sport where you exert yourself physically such that you injure yourself, but that you exert yourself such that you heal yourself. It is not a sport where you actually compete with others, though it may appear so. But essentially, at the very heart of the matter is competition with your own self. For self-control, for betterment, for control over not just your body, but also your mind. Yoga, as you all know, is a great science that evolved in the mists of history, in millennia past in India. As far back as 3,000 years ago, in the inscriptions of the Indus Valley civilization, there were references to yoga. There were practices followed in Hinduism, in Buddhism, in Jainism, more than 2,500 years ago. But it was in the 1st century AD that the great Indian sage Patanjali, he codified the various practices that had been prevailing till then, put them together, gave them a structure and a framework and a definition, essentially calling it the science that stills the mind. You know, the mind is essentially a monkey. It is very, very unstable. It moves from place to place, from time to time, within oneself, and it was Patanjali who codified the various yogic practices. Yoga has been practiced in India for thousands of years. In the 20th century, it became even more popular through the efforts of great practitioners like T.Krishnamacharya, later his students like B.K.S. Iyengar, and others. I understand Mr. Bikram has also done his bit to spread the good word about yoga in the West. But when you look at the practices of yoga in the West, a few things strike me. When we look at yoga in its essence, it is essentially a means to understand the mind, the bodily senses, and to acquire some kind of control over them, to synthesize the mind and the body. It is also a means to segregate the two and acquire individual control over the two, which is not possible otherwise in the physical body where the mind resides. We in India look at yoga as a spectrum of practices, beginning with yama, for instance, which is self-restraint and self-control, over the bodily senses. Then there is the concept of niyama. Niyama, which is a disciplined way of life. You then have the asana, the asanas that you practice, the physical postures. There is then also pranayama, or breath control. Then you have dharana, which is focusing the mind and concentrating it on a particular idea, thought, or thing. Then you have dhyan, which goes beyond dharana. And dhyan can be with an empty mind also. Dhyan is about not just filling your mind up with things. As it is, we lead stressful life. There are so many things in our mind. But dhyan also permits you, as a yogic practice, as a stage of yogic practice, to empty your mind. And the empty mind sometimes is the deepest, which allows you to recognize and touch your true inner self. And then you have ultimately samadhi, which is the ultimate in yogic practice. As such, when we look at yogic practices around the world, the focus is generally on asanas, the physical postures, and to some extent pranayama, breath control. But I would like to leave this thought with you. All the young people that have gathered here from four corners of Mexico, some even from the United States. I understand several luminaries have come from the United States. That you should observe yoga as a practice that is broader than just the asanas and pranayama. At the end of the day, your yogic practices must be combined with what we in India called pure living, sattvic jivan. Your thoughts must be pure, your actions must be pure, and you must combine yogic practice with self-control and discipline. In Sanskrit, we have a saying, an old saying, Nityam charami khelami pratah surya namami cha Nityam pibami khadami shlokan mantran padhami cha. That we begin our day, rising every day when the sun rises, and we go out with our business and various other practices, and every day we also must eat and drink, and we must also pursue our studies and other practices at work. But whatever we do, there is this word nityam, and nityam is related to niyam, because there should be a daily routine and there should be daily discipline over what we do, what we speak, what we eat, what we drink, how we interact with others in society. This brings out the true inner self, very ably aided and abetted by the practice of yoga. I am so happy to see so many young people here for the 5th Yoga Cup being held. I am quite sure with the great efforts being made by the organizers, the International Yoga Sports Federation, and all their other collaborators in Mexico, that we will have even more participation, even greater participation in the 6th Cup, which I assume will be held next year. Please remember that yoga, this great patrimony that India has given to the world, is also linked to the other great patrimony that India has given to the world, that of Mahatma Gandhi, and the concept of peace and non-violence, what we call satya, truth, and ahimsa, non-violence. In this world where there is so much of discord, so much of tension, so much of intolerance, it is concepts like truth and non-violence as propounded by Mahatma Gandhi. He was a yogi of a very different order. He practiced a different kind of yoga. But this great science of yoga that you practice and you learn is also something that takes you closer to the concepts, the eternal concepts, the eternally valid concepts, the universal concepts of truth and non-violence, and recognition of the goodness that prevails in our innermost selves. As the ambassador of India in Mexico, I'm happy to inform you that apart from yoga, which is a very great practice, we in our Gurudev Tagore Indian Cultural Center also offer classes in sitar, in tabla, in various Indian classical dance forms. We have a very good library containing many good books on Indian culture. So please feel free to join us at the Cultural Center if you wish to also learn about other attributes of Indian culture. With these few words, once again, my most sincere felicitations and congratulations to all the participants. Remember, whether you win or lose is not very important. Do your best and remember that at the end of the day, you're competing with yourselves. Thank you.
En este momento se está haciendo entrega de las medallas.